The first thing I saw was the ceiling. It was white, stained in places, and completely unfamiliar. The kind of ceiling you stare at when you're trying to remember how you got somewhere, except I couldn't remember anything at all. Beside me, a machine beeped softly, a steady rhythm that felt like it was counting seconds I'd already lost. My mouth was dry, sandpaper dry, and my throat burned with every swallow. I tried to move, to shift even an inch, and that's when the pain hit. Sharp and electric, it shot through my hips and legs like someone had driven a spike straight through bone. I went completely still. I blinked. The room was fuzzy around the edges, like looking through a fogged-up window. Then a voice came from my left, quiet and calm. "Miss Monroe, you're coming around now. You've been unconscious for 2 days." I turned my head slowly. A nurse stood beside me, her face young and kind. I caught the name on her badge before my vision cleared enough to focus: Camilla. She was adjusting the 4-line, her movements practiced and gentle. After a glance at the monitor, she picked up a cup with a straw and held it to my lips. My lips felt like they might crack open if I moved them too fast. The water was cool, and I took a small sip, then winced as it scratched my raw throat. "What happened?" My voice came out like gravel. Camilla's expression shifted, the professional calm softening into something more careful. "You were in an accident. A drunk driver ran a red light. His car hit you at high speed." She paused, letting that land. "You were struck on the head. Both of your legs are broken. They had to do surgery, inserted metal rods to help the bones heal correctly." I closed my eyes. That explained the weight. The heaviness I felt from the waist down wasn't just sedation. It was hardware. Metal holding me together. "Your parents were notified right away," Camilla continued. "They came by, brought some of your things. They said they were leaving." My eyes opened. "Where?" She shook her head slightly. "They didn't say exactly. Just that they'd be out of the country." Something cold settled in my chest, but I didn't have time to name it. My hand fumbled toward the bedside table. I needed my phone. Camilla saw what I was doing and placed it gently in my palm. The screen lit up with notifications. Most of them didn't register. But one did. A voicemail from Mom. Sent at 7:42 a.m. The same day as the accident. I pressed play and held the phone to my ear. "Hi, sweetie. It's Mom." Her voice was bright, rushed, the sound of an airport in the background. "We're at the airport, getting on a plane to New Zealand. We've wanted to go for a long time, and since Ivy has a break from work, we decided to take her with us." A pause. Then muffled laughter. My father's voice, distant but unmistakable. "Tell her not to call. Roaming is too expensive." Mom came back on, slightly breathless. "Oh, right. Don't call us while we're in Queenstown. The hospital has our email if anything's urgent. We'll be back in 3 weeks. Love you." Click. I stared at the screen. 3 weeks. Queenstown. Ivy. Don't call. The heart rate monitor beside me started beeping faster. Camilla turned. "Everything all right?" I nodded. I couldn't speak. The truth was settling over me slowly, the way a bruise darkens under the skin minutes after the impact. They knew. They'd been here while I was unconscious. They'd seen me lying in this bed, hooked up to machines, and they'd still gotten on that plane. With Ivy. While I lay here with 2 broken legs and a head injury and metal rods holding my bones together. But the pain in my chest wasn't from my body. It was something else. Sharp. Clear. Final. I turned away from Camilla and faced the wall. I didn't make a sound. But the tears came anyway, rolling down my cheeks and dropping onto the pillow, one after another, in the quiet rhythm of a truth I was only beginning to understand. I used to think we were a normal family. We had the 2-story house on the outskirts of Portland, the kind with a front porch and windows that caught the afternoon light. Blackberry bushes ran wild along the back fence, and the old swing set Dad built when I turned 6 still stood in the corner of the yard, rusted but solid. Dinner was on the table every night at 6. Chores were pinned to a chart on the refrigerator, each task assigned in my mother's neat handwriting. On the surface, we looked like everyone else. But underneath, there were always boundaries. Quiet ones. Invisible ones. Lines you didn't cross. I learned early where those lines were. I was the calm one, the neat one, the one who did her homework without being reminded and never talked back. Ivy was the opposite. Loud, messy, rebellious in ways that should have gotten her in trouble, but never did. Mom called her miracle baby, born 4 years after me, after a pregnancy the doctors said might never happen. From the start, Ivy was treated like royalty. Like she was made of something finer than the rest of us. I don't remember ever being angry about it. I just learned, somewhere around the age of 7 or 8, that if you wanted something done, you did it yourself. If you wanted something, you earned it yourself. That was just how it worked. School was the same story. I studied. I worked. I earned a full scholarship to Oregon State University, majored in computer science, finished a semester early. Graduation day came and went. No one from my family was in the audience. Ivy had a dance rehearsal. Important one, apparently. I didn't complain. I framed my diploma, wrote a thank you note to the financial aid office, and moved on. By 25, I'd landed a job at Dynatrace, then jumped to another company, something newer and more promising in downtown Portland. The signing bonus was enough for a down payment on a simple apartment. Small, but mine. I remember my mother crying during a video call when I told her. She said she and Dad were so proud. Said they'd always believed in me. A few months later, Dad brought up retirement. His voice had that careful quality, the one that meant he was leading up to something. Mom's back was getting worse, he said. The school district wasn't paying what it used to. They'd been thinking maybe it was time to step back, take it easier. I offered to help. They agreed immediately. Like they'd been waiting for me to say it. Then Ivy decided she wanted a new career. Marketing wasn't for her anymore. She was going to be an event planner. I paid for the courses. Then for the new clothes she needed for networking. Then for culinary school when event planning turned out to be not quite right. Then for photography classes. Then for something else I stopped keeping track of. Nothing ever lasted more than 6 months. They painted the house that year. Installed a fireplace. Took a trip to Napa, then another to Santa Fe. Every few weeks, my parents would send short emails, nothing emotional, just updates with numbers attached. The roof needed repairs. The car was acting up. Ivy had found a new opportunity and needed a little help getting started. And I always said yes. They called me generous. Reliable. They said I was the one who held the family together. For a long time, I believed that. I thought love meant giving. I thought support was supposed to be unconditional, even when it only flowed in one direction. I was wrong. 2 days after surgery, still floating on painkillers and hospital food, I opened my banking app. I don't know why. Maybe I already knew. Maybe some part of me had been keeping count all along. The numbers weren't a surprise. But they hit like cold water anyway. Just in the last month, $2,000 to my parents for household expenses. $500 to Ivy for getting ready for her newest career. $800 for their SUV repairs. Then the automatic payments I'd set up months ago, utilities, grocery deliveries, subscriptions I'd long forgotten. When I added it all up, it came to $9,800. Almost $10,000. In 1 month. On the 3rd day, I asked Camilla to bring my laptop. Told her I needed to check work email. Really, I just needed answers. The screen swam at first. The painkillers made everything soft at the edges. But I blinked until my eyes focused and logged into my credit card account with fingers that wouldn't stop trembling. My stomach clenched. 2 days after the accident. A new charge. $7,500. The payee was Southern Sky Travel. I stared at the screen, willing the numbers to rearrange themselves into something that made sense. But they didn't. It was the payment for their vacation. On my card. Their trip to New Zealand. They'd used my credit card to fly themselves and Ivy to Queenstown while I lay unconscious in a hospital bed with metal rods in my legs. I closed the laptop and set it on the bedside table. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at nothing. The machine beside me beeped its steady rhythm. Somewhere down the hall, a cart rattled past. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat in the quiet, letting the truth settle into my bones alongside the metal. I closed the banking app and opened Instagram instead. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me needed to see it. to make it real. There wasn't much from the flight itself. But once they landed, the feed came alive. First photo, Ivy in a plush white robe, holding a glass of sparkling wine on a balcony overlooking a lake so blue it almost hurt to look at. Lake Wakatapu, if I remembered right from the travel magazines she used to leave around the house. The caption read, "Winding down in Queenstown with the fam sparkles emoji is magic. Best trip ever. Thanks to our sponsor, Chase winking emoji, blessed emoji, Queenstown emoji, New Zealand emoji." Second photo, my father, glass of red wine in hand, standing in front of a vineyard with mountains in the distance. Winery tour. He looked relaxed. Happy. Third, my mother, giant sunglasses hiding half her face, beaming at the camera with shopping bags dangling from both wrists. Some designer store I'd never heard of. Fourth, Ivy again, this time on a rented bicycle, hair blowing in the wind, grinning like she didn't have a care in the world. The caption, "When your freedom is paid for by your sister's job, grateful emoji, adventures emoji." She'd tagged me in it. I sat there in my hospital bed, legs immobilized, head still fuzzy from painkillers, and stared at my sister's face on my phone screen. She was laughing. They were all laughing. Drinking wine and taking selfies and going on bike rides while I lay in a room with beeping machines and metal rods in my legs. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. Just cold. Emptiness. Not from the medication, something deeper. Colder. These weren't strangers doing this to me. This was my family. The people I'd helped month after month, year after year. The ones who called me reliable. The ones who said I held them together. They'd packed everything I'd given them into suitcases, flown halfway across the world, and toasted their freedom somewhere across the Tasman Sea. I closed Instagram and opened my expense spreadsheet. The one where I tracked everything, every transfer, every automatic payment, every dollar I'd sent their way. Last updated 2 days before the accident. There was even a reminder I'd left myself, increase mom's allowance. Heating bills were higher in the winter. I stared at that line until the numbers blurred. This time, it wasn't the painkillers. It was something heavier. I closed the laptop and set it on the table. A few minutes later, Camilla came in with her soft smile and a dose of something stronger. She straightened my blanket, tucked the edges in the way nurses do. "Try to rest," she said. I nodded. But sleep didn't come. My mind was already working on something. Making a list, though I didn't know yet what it was for. When I first said the word out loud, fraud, Camilla didn't even flinch. She just looked at me for a moment, then asked, very quietly, "Would you like me to call the hospital social worker?" That's how I met Mr. Reyes. He was a quiet man, middle-aged, with steady eyes and the kind of calm that made you feel like things might actually be okay. Not in a fake way. In a way that suggested he'd seen worse and knew how to handle it. Exactly the kind of person you need when everything you thought was solid starts crumbling. I told him everything. How my parents had access to my accounts from years ago, back when I'd trusted them with that kind of thing. How I'd been paying their bills for years, mortgage, utilities, repairs, vacations. How they'd used my credit card to book a trip to New Zealand 2 days after I was nearly killed by a drunk driver. He listened. Didn't interrupt. Just took slow, careful notes in a small spiral notebook. When I finally ran out of words, he looked up, met my eyes, and said 4 sentences I didn't know I needed to hear. "You're not crazy. And you're not alone. We're going to handle this. One step at a time." He helped me contact the bank's fraud department. Camilla sat beside me during the call, her hand resting on the bed rail, while I explained to a stranger which charges were made without my permission. I blocked the card they'd been using. Ordered a new one. Changed every password I could think of. Revoked every access I'd ever given. Then I went through my automatic transfers one by one and stopped them all. Parents' monthly allowance, canceled. Ivy's career funding, canceled. Utility payments, grocery deliveries, every subscription I'd ever added for them gone. Whatever was left of my savings, I transferred to a new account at a different bank. One they didn't know existed. One they couldn't touch. Mr. Reyes helped me file an official report. Connected me with a lawyer who specialized in financial exploitation, just in case things escalated. He didn't say, just in case they fight back. He said, just in case things get more complicated. I appreciated the careful wording. That night, after he left and Camilla made her final rounds, I lay in the dark and listened to the machines beep. My legs ached. My head throbbed. But underneath all of it, something else was happening. Something that felt almost like clearing ground. They'd taken almost everything. But not everything. Not yet. And I was just getting started. But the most satisfying part came later, after Mr. Reyes left and the bank calls were done. I was lying there, still floating on painkillers, when I remembered an email. It had come in days ago, right after the charges appeared. My card was linked to their booking, so the airline had sent the confirmation to my address. I found it. Tickets from Queenstown to San Francisco. Departing the following Wednesday. 2 adults, 1 child. Business class for Ivy. There was a link at the bottom. Cancel booking. I clicked it. A new page loaded. A summary of their flights, their seats, their names. One button at the bottom, red letters, cancel. Are you sure? I clicked yes. Part of the money credited back to my account almost instantly. $7,500 minus some cancellation fee, but I didn't care about the math. What I cared about was the soft chime my phone made when the refund processed. A small sound. Clean. Final. Like a period at the end of a sentence I should have finished years ago. Camilla came in to check my vitals. I looked up at her. I was told not to call, I said quietly. So I won't. She smiled. Not with pity. With something closer to respect. Let me know if you need help. We can tell the airline the card was used fraudulently if they give you trouble. I nodded and took a deep breath. The air in the room suddenly felt cleaner. Lighter. That evening, the sky outside my window turned soft amber, the kind of light that makes everything look gentler than it really is. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every request, every time I'd said yes when every part of me wanted to say no. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt emptied out. But not broken. That was the important part. Not broken. They had left me in this hospital bed and flown off to a life they thought I should pay for. And maybe for years, I'd believed them. But lying there in the fading light, I understood something I'd never let myself see before. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is stop talking altogether. The first messages came at 2:47 a.m. Portland time. I was half conscious, lost somewhere between sleep and the fog of medication. My phone buzzed twice on the bedside table. Camilla had reminded me to turn off notifications. I hadn't listened. Maybe I was waiting for this. An email from Dad. What the hell is going on? We're stuck in Queenstown. Our cards aren't working. The bank says the account is frozen. This is cruel, Talia. We're your parents. Period. No question mark. No concern about how I was doing or whether my legs were healing. Just anger. Just blame. 2 minutes later, an email from Mom. I don't know what phase you're going through, but enough. You need to call the bank and fix this. This isn't normal. This isn't how we raised you. Then Ivy, you're overreacting because of the accident. You're going to be fine. That's what nurses are for. We're stuck here and it's your fault. I read each message twice. 3 times. Let them settle. Every single one was the same thing, just dressed in different clothes. Entitlement dressed as concern. Anger dressed as disappointment. Blame dressed as care. Not one of them asked how I was. Not one of them mentioned the accident, the surgery, the metal rods, the months of recovery ahead. Just their trip. Their inconvenience. Their money. I forwarded all 3 to the lawyer Mr. Reyes had connected me with. I didn't need to defend myself. The documents spoke for themselves. The bank statements. The credit card charges. The years of transfers. Let him handle it. But Ivy's message, I kept staring at that one. You're going to be fine. That's what nurses are for. Period. Like my recovery was just a line item on a bill. Like lying in a hospital bed with my body held together by metal was just an inconvenience in their budget. Something to be managed by professionals while they got on with the important business of living their lives. I hit reply. Boundaries are free. You just press send. I sent it and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not joy. Not victory. Just clarity. Clean and sharp as glass. A few more emails came after that. Dad wrote that I was unstable, that the stress of the accident had clearly affected my judgment. Mom said I was just emotionally worked up and would regret this when I calmed down. Ivy added her own flavor of sarcasm. Guess Queenstown wasn't pretty enough for you to relax. After that, I stopped reading. In the morning, I blocked their numbers. All 3 of them. I kept the emails not to reread, not to agonize over, but as proof. If they ever decided to take this further, legally or through some other angle, I had everything documented. The lawyer had copies. The bank had records. I was ready. Camilla brought breakfast at 8 a.m. I was quiet. She didn't ask. She just adjusted my pillows, set the tray within reach, poured my coffee, and handed me back my phone like it was something heavy she was helping me carry. "Did they write?" she asked. I nodded. A lot. She didn't ask what they said. She just pulled up a chair, sat beside me, and peeled an orange. Slowly, carefully, she separated each segment and arranged them on a napkin between us. I ate them one by one, silent, while the morning light crept across the floor. That evening, the sun turned gold through the blinds. I scrolled through my email one last time, found Ivy's message, and deleted it. Not because I forgave her. Not because I wanted to let go. Just because I no longer needed it inside me. It had served its purpose. It had shown me who they were, and I'd finally believed it. Their silence after that wasn't peace exactly, but it was quieter than the constant noise they'd always created. And for now, that was enough. They showed up unannounced on Wednesday. The call came in the afternoon. My room phone rang, rare enough to make me look up from the window where I'd been watching clouds drift past. It was the front desk. The nurse's voice was tight, professional in a way that suggested she was choosing her words carefully. "Your parents and sister are downstairs. They're upset." I thanked her, hung up, and looked at Camilla. She was adjusting my four, but she'd heard enough. "Can you stay?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. Pulled her chair closer to the bed, positioned herself where she could see the door, and waited while I pressed the button to raise the head of my bed. I needed to be upright for this. Needed to look as strong as I could manage, even if my legs were useless under the blankets and my body still throbbed with every heartbeat. They didn't knock. The door swung open hard enough to hit the wall, and they poured in like a wave, sharp movements, loud voices, 3 sets of eyes all fixed on me with the same expression. I'd seen that expression before. It was the one they wore when something belonged to them and someone else was trying to take it away. "What is wrong with you?" Mom crossed the room in 4 quick strides, stopping at the foot of my bed. Her face was flushed, her voice pitched high. "Do you have any idea what we've been through?" Dad was right behind her. "We got stranded in a foreign country." Stranded, Talia. "Do you understand what that means?" "We were humiliated in front of our friends. We had to borrow money to get home. From strangers." He was waving his hands, face red. "You're disgracing this family." Ivy hung back by the door, arms crossed, sunglasses still on even though we were inside. She hadn't taken them off when she walked in. Probably hadn't taken them off the whole flight home. "Are you seriously going to milk this accident thing for all it's worth?" Her voice was flat, dismissive, like I was putting on a show. Camilla stood up. "If anyone raises their voice again, I'm calling security." She didn't shout. Didn't need to. Her voice cut through theirs like a knife through butter. "This is a hospital. You will speak quietly or you will leave." For a moment, no one moved. Then Dad opened his mouth, thought better of it, and shut it again. Mom's jaw worked like she was chewing on words she wanted to spit out. Ivy just shrugged one shoulder and leaned against the doorframe. I took a slow breath. Reached for the manila folder on my tray table. Opened it. "Here are the conditions," I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. Dad let out a short, ugly laugh. "Conditions? Seriously? Prepared by your lawyer? What are we now, your employees?" I didn't answer. Just kept going. One-time payment. That's it. No more monthly help. No more joint accounts. If you want to communicate with me, it goes through a family mediator. Officially. Ivy pushed off the doorframe. "And if we don't want to? What then?" You going to play the orphan now? Poor little Talia, all alone in the world. I looked at her. Really looked. At her sunglasses, her expensive haircut, her designer clothes bought with money I'd sent. If you don't want to, I said quietly, then we simply go our separate ways. Mom reached for the folder, took it from my hands, held it for a moment, and then just shook her head, not even glancing at the pages inside. This isn't you, Talia. Her voice had shifted now. Softer. The voice she used when she wanted me to doubt myself. You're just having a breakdown. The accident, the stress, it's affected you. When you're thinking clearly again, you'll see that. This is me, I said. Just not the Talia you could control anymore. Silence. They looked at me. I looked back. No one spoke. No one apologized. No one asked how my legs were healing or whether I was sleeping better or if the pain had gotten any easier. Mom set the folder down on the tray table. Untouched. Unopened. And then they left. Just turned and walked out, Ivy first, then Dad, then Mom, the door swinging shut behind them with a soft click that felt louder than their entrance. I stared at that door for a long time. Waited to feel something. Regret, maybe. Guilt. The familiar pull that always came after I said no to them, the voice that whispered I was being selfish, that family was everything, that I should just fix things and make it right. Nothing came. Camilla's hand found mine on the blanket. Light. Warm. You did it, she said softly. And for the first time since the accident, I believed her. On a rainy Friday, my Aunt Noreen picked me up from the hospital. I'd almost forgotten about her, to be honest. My mother's sister, but nothing like my mother. They drifted apart years ago over something no one ever explained to me. She lived alone in a small house on the other side of Portland, and when Mr. Reyes asked if there was family I could stay with during recovery, her name had surfaced from somewhere deep in my memory. She was waiting at the curb when Camilla wheeled me out. Her car was old, practical, with a pillow already waiting in the passenger seat. Jazz played softly on the radio. She helped me transfer from the wheelchair without fuss, adjusted the seatbelt so it didn't press on my legs, and got behind the wheel. We barely talked on the drive. The rain slid down the windows in sheets, blurring the city into watercolors. Every now and then she'd glance over, check that I was comfortable, and look back at the road. Finally, somewhere around the turn onto her street, she said 5 words. We'll take it one day at a time. That was it. No interrogation. No demands. Just that. Her house was small, 1 story, exactly what I needed. It smelled like herbs and something warm, the kind of smell that makes you think of bread fresh from the oven even when there's no bread in sight. She'd installed a ramp over the front steps without telling me. The guest room had a walk-in shower with a chair, and the closet was full of neatly folded towels. She'd thought of everything. She gave me space. Didn't hover. Didn't ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. But I never felt alone. She'd appear with tea at the right moment, or sit quietly in the living room while I did my exercises, or leave a book on the nightstand that she thought I might like. Small things. But they added up. One evening, about a week after I'd moved in, we were having dinner, some kind of roasted chicken with vegetables, the first real meal I'd eaten in weeks, and she finally said something she'd probably been holding in for a while. They did the same thing with your grandpa. She was pouring tea, not looking at me. Her voice was matter-of-fact, but there was something underneath it. Old. Heavy. Drained his pension while he was in the hospice. Booked one cruise after another. Said he'd have wanted them to enjoy his final days. She set the teapot down, finally met my eyes. Some patterns just keep going until someone stops them. I didn't say anything. Just nodded, let the weight of it settle. It wasn't just about me. It never had been. On Monday, I started physical therapy. The facility was 15 minutes from Noreen's house. She drove me there and picked me up every day, never once complaining about the schedule. The first session was brutal. Every movement felt like pulling my body through concrete, like my muscles had forgotten how to work and had to be taught all over again. But each time, there was progress. Tiny, almost invisible, but there. Standing for 5 seconds longer than yesterday. Holding my balance without grabbing the rail. Taking 3 steps with the walker instead of 2. I kept going. Somewhere in there, I started reaching out. People I hadn't talked to in years. College friends who'd drifted away. Colleagues from old jobs. People who'd gotten lost in the constant flow of family demands that always seemed more important than maintaining connections. Some responded. Some didn't. But the ones who did were enough. Carly from my study group sophomore year, she answered within hours, and we met for lunch at a cafe with wide doors that could accommodate my walker. My old mentor from Dynatrace sent a long email full of encouragement and offers to help. One evening, feeling brave, I invited the neighbors from across the street over for soup. Just because. They came. We talked about nothing important. It felt normal. Human. After they left, Noreen found me in the kitchen, staring at the empty bowls. "See," she said, touching my shoulder. "There's a whole world out there. You just couldn't see it before." I thought about that for a long time after she went to bed. She was right. I couldn't see it before. My family had been so loud, so demanding, so constant, that I'd mistaken their noise for the whole world. But it wasn't. It was just one room in a very large house. And I'd finally walked out. A week after I moved in with Noreen, Camilla came to visit. She showed up on a rainy Saturday afternoon with a box of blueberry muffins and an umbrella that was clearly not doing its job. I watched from the window as she sprinted up the wheelchair ramp, laughing at herself, water dripping from her hair. We sat on the covered porch with mugs of tea and watched the rain paint patterns on the street. The muffins were still warm. "I know this is probably against the rules," she said eventually, brushing crumbs from her lap. She wasn't looking at me. "But I'd like to ask you for coffee sometime." Not as a nurse. I was quiet for a few seconds. Just looking at her. Really looking. At the way the gray light caught her eyes, at the small smile she was trying to hide, at the way she kept glancing at me and then away, like she wasn't sure she should have said anything at all. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Safe. Warm. Like maybe the world wasn't just a series of transactions where I gave and others took. "Okay," I said. "I'd like that." She looked at me then, and her smile wasn't hiding anymore. We went that Sunday. The cafe was small, tucked between a bookstore and a dry cleaner's, the kind of place you walk past 100 times without noticing. Camilla ordered tea. I got black coffee. We sat by the window and watched people hurry past with their umbrellas and their shopping bags. We didn't talk about the hospital. Didn't talk about the accident. Didn't talk about my family. Instead, we talked about travel, places we'd been, places we wanted to go. She'd spent a summer in Portugal once, years ago, and her eyes lit up describing the light in Lisbon, the taste of pastel de nata fresh from the oven. I told her about a trip I'd taken to the Oregon coast by myself, just driving until I found a town I'd never heard of, staying in a motel that smelled like salt and pine. We talked about music. She played piano badly, she said, but it made her happy. I admitted I'd never learned an instrument, always too busy with school, with work, with family obligations that swallowed every spare minute. We talked about starting over. What it feels like. What it costs. What you find on the other side. As I stirred my coffee, watching the cream swirl into black, I realized something simple but powerful. Something I'd never let myself feel before. I wasn't starting over alone. A year passed. I don't know exactly when it happened, the shift from surviving to living. It crept up on me slowly, like the first green shoots after a long winter. One day I was still counting the weeks since the accident, and the next I realized I'd stopped counting altogether. My legs healed. Slowly, painfully, with more setbacks than I wanted to admit. But they healed. I traded the walker for a cane, and then one morning I walked to the end of the driveway and back without holding onto anything. Noreen watched from the window. When I turned around, she was crying. So was I. I found a new job. Remote, flexible, with people who didn't know my history and didn't need to. Work that actually interested me, not just work that paid the bills so I could send the rest away. I decorated my room at Noreen's, my room, she insisted, not the guest room, with things I actually liked, not things that were practical or expected. And I kept building. Friendships. Routines. A life that felt like mine. The invitation went out 2 weeks before. Simple. Handwritten. Dinner at my place. 6 p.m. Bring whatever you want. Just come. Now the kitchen smelled of roasted garlic and rosemary. I'd set the table for 5, the good plates, the ones Noreen said hadn't been used in years. Candles, because why not? Flowers from the farmer's market. Arranged badly, but with intention. Camilla arrived first, a lemon tart in a box tied with string. She kissed my cheek like it was the most natural thing in the world and went straight to the kitchen to find a plate for her offering. Noreen came next, apple cider under one arm, a new book under the other. For later, she said, handing me the book. No spoilers. Carly and Marcus showed up together, still laughing about something that happened on the way over. Marcus from physical therapy, he'd become a friend somewhere along the way, the kind who texted just to check in. Carly from college, rediscovered and cherished. They brought stories and loud voices and the kind of energy that fills a room without overwhelming it. We ate slowly. Passed dishes back and forth. Talked about nothing and everything: work, bad movies, good books, the neighbor's dog who'd learned to open the gate. It wasn't a party. Just a quiet, warm moment, the kind you especially treasure after everything you've been through. The kind you never take for granted again. After dessert, Camilla washed dishes at the sink. Noreen folded napkins with careful precision. Carly and Marcus argued gently about which streaming service had the best documentaries. I slipped into the bedroom. Just for a moment. Just to breathe. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Ivy. I stared at the name on the screen. I hadn't seen it in months. Hadn't thought about it in weeks. But there it was, glowing in the dim light of my bedroom. We need to talk. Just us. Period. No apology. No explanation. No acknowledgement of anything that had happened. Just another demand. Just another door she hadn't earned the right to open. I didn't open the message. I just let my thumb hover over the screen for a moment, then set the phone down and watched the light fade to black. Some bridges don't burn. They just quietly crumble behind you. And you don't need to watch. You don't need to document the fall. You just keep walking forward, and one day you look back and realize you can't even see where they used to stand. I went back to the living room. Camilla had finished the dishes and was pouring cider into glasses. She handed me one, then settled onto the couch beside me. With a soft sigh, not heavy, not sad, just peaceful, she leaned her shoulder against mine. Voices filled the room. Carly was telling a story about a disastrous state. Marcus was laughing so hard he couldn't breathe. Noreen was adding dry commentary from the armchair, making it worse in the best way. My eyes drifted to the bookshelf. Between a photograph of the Oregon coast and a small clay bird my grandfather gave me when I was 8, there was a new addition. A small framed card. I didn't remember putting it there. Maybe Noreen had. Maybe Camilla. It didn't matter. On it was a quote. Simple. Black ink on cream paper. Sometimes the silence you choose is the ending they deserve. I read it once. Twice. Let the words settle somewhere deep. I didn't need to call. Didn't need to fix. Didn't need to explain or defend or justify. The weight I used to carry, it wasn't mine anymore. I'd set it down somewhere along the way, and I couldn't even remember where. I leaned back into the sofa. Camilla's shoulder warm against mine. Voices and laughter filling the space around us. It felt like home. A real one. One I had chosen. One that had chosen me back. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel abandoned. I didn't feel left behind. I didn't feel like the one who gave and gave while everyone else took. I felt like someone who had left for the right reasons and, finally, found her place. Outside, the rain started again, soft against the windows. Inside, there was warmth. There was quiet. There was enough. I closed my eyes and let myself be exactly where I was.